Hello, friends. Today I'd like to talk about a book recommendation which I found in Thomas Lockley's excellent book, uh, The Gentleman from Japan. And the recommendation was for a book which I'm going to share the Kindle for now. So here it is. Um, it's Timon Screech, The Shogun's Silver Telescope. Oxford University Press, 2020. Subtitle God, Art and Money in the English Quest for Japan. So this is, of course, in the same field. And what caught my eye, I bought the Kindle straight away. Um, and what instantly caught my eye, the acknowledgements I take as read for the time being, was not the illustrations as such. I haven't really checked them, nor the note on money. Chronology of major events is interesting and worth noting. So we're talking about from 1588 to 1623. So from the time of the Spanish Armada to the English withdrawal from Japan. Okay. And some maps. It's very useful to have some maps. Especially the Asia map, I think, is very handy because it mentions, it shows where a few of the places mentioned in Satow's edition of Saris appear. And so Patani is certainly mentioned. Melaka or Malacca, which looks rather like it's in the area of, is that right, Singapore now? Seems to be. The Strait of Sunda, Batavia, Jakarta, and Banten, which is Bantam. And then we've got over on the right side, well, the east, you've got Maluku, the Moluccas, the Spice Islands. Okay. And of course, up here in Japan, we have Edo, Tokyo, Hirano, and Nagasaki. And then over here, we've got in India, we've got Goa, Masulipatam, Surat, Diu, and over there in Yemen area, we've got Sana'a al-Mukka, which is Mocha, and Aden. So that's all very handy to have. Because I was getting a bit frustrated with all these places I'd never heard of or didn't really know where they were. So that's all very useful. And the next thing, which has caught my eye, is the preface. Yeah, okay, here we are. Preface. And I came across a version of Saris recently. There are three or four versions, I think four actually. And the one I came across was the Toyo Bunko publication Series D, Volume 3, The First Voyage of the English to Japan by John Saris. And it's transcribed and collated by Takanobu Otsuka. And here, in this preface to Professor Screech's book, we have indeed an explanation of what was going on. So I think I'd like to read this. As bombs rained down on British cities in the summer of 1941, Otsuka Takanobu, sitting in Tokyo, decided to take a stand. He published a book. It was small, but something only he could write. The print run would be limited, but the work would be significant. Dr. Otsuka lived at a time of international conflict, but his intellectual engagement was with a more peaceful encounter, though a clash nonetheless, occurring more than 300 years earlier, and which is also the subject of the present book. Dr. Otsuka was assistant professor at Tokyo's prestigious University of Science. His area of expertise was English was English linguistics, Dr. Otsuka had acquired a skill unique in Japan of reading Old English manuscripts, and one day, browsing in the famous Oriental library, Toyo Bunko, not far from his campus, he came across a curious handwritten document. It was the journal of John Saris, the first commander to bring an English ship to Japan. The Clove had dropped anchor in the southern port of Hirano, and Saris's journal told of the voyage's departure from London in 1611, its exploits en route, and his remarkable success in establishing a flourishing trade with the Shogun's realm, and then of his safe return to London late in 1614. Distraught at events in Europe and aggrieved at his homeland's impending alliance with Germany, Dr. Otsuka sought to rekindle knowledge of Saris's extraordinary but forgotten voyage and the first links between Japan and Britain. Having transcribed Saris's text, Dr. Otsuka put down his pen on the 21st of August 1941. He could not have known that just days before, Plymouth, a port that Saris used, had been reduced to rubble, and things were to get even worse. What Dr. Otsuka had found was not the original version of the journal written by Saris himself. That was in the British Library in London. What the Oriental Library, the Toyo Bunko, possessed was written out much more beautifully by a professional, and it carried the date 1617, so 3 years later. Importantly, it also carried a dedication to no less a person than Sir Francis Bacon, Attorney General to King James I, and later his Lord Chancellor. It is not certain that Bacon read the manuscript, but at least the intention was to directly communicate Saris's experiences in Japan to the highest levels of English society and government. Communication with Japan was evidently a matter of huge political importance. There was also a third version of the journal. This was a publication based on Saris's original, but with adaptations put out in 1624 as part of a best-selling anthology of travel writings compiled by Samuel Purchas. Purchas had read dozens of journals during his researches, but he readily informed the reader, "I have not seen any of our India voyages better penned than that of Saris." Dr. Otsuka had never been able to visit England to consult the original manuscripts, but he had a copy of Purchas's published version. Luckily, Saris's original writing had been published in London in the late 19th century, and this Dr. Otsuka also knew. He thus had access to all three versions. Each differs in some important respects. Dr. Otsuka therefore included all variants and parallels as footnotes to his edition of the Tokyo text. In doing this, he highlighted how history is written and rewritten, with changes of emphasis and slant. Saris's own handwritten version must be the closest to events, but not entirely, since he would have brushed it up using a draft that was then discarded. Voyage commanders kept logs to assist future mariners, but also to convince investors how assiduously they had undertaken their tasks. Mistakes and petty squabbles that hampered progress might be written down at the time, but deleted when what they called the foul papers were turned into a fair copy. The other two versions had agendas too. Purchas wanted to be readable, and he was rather free in making changes. He was also a Church of England clergyman who wanted to see a purpose to his countrymen's discoveries. The third version in Tokyo was to appeal to and even influence the great philosopher-statesman Bacon, whose essays on a range of topics, moral, geographical, and political, had appeared to tremendous acclaim in 1597 and were then expanded in 1612. Thanks to Dr. Otsuka's work, it is a simple matter for the modern reader to compare and contrast. Thanks to this, and also to the labours of many other diligent scholars, it is possible to tell the tale of Saris and the Clove, and to set it in the context of the English quest for Japan, the furthest and they hoped richest land on earth. To make themselves welcome there, they had to take to its ruler, whom they would learn was called the Shogun, a worthy gift. It was a silver telescope. Right, so that's the preface to the Shogun's Silver Telescope. Next is chapter 1. And I don't think I shall go on reading for the time being anyway. But there are some other things I would like to point out. So let's see if I can stop the share of this. I've got other things to share. So let me show you what else I want to share. This is Otsuka's book, Transcription and Collation. The book that the preface refers to, that I've just read. So this is the front cover, published by the Toyo Bunko in 1941. Okay. And now next to that, we have, this is the National Diet Library. They have scanned a version of the voyage. The first voyage of the English to the island of Japan. And this is the beautifully written one referred to in the preface. And this is scanned by the National Diet Library. This is from their website. Okay. I'm not going to go through. Well, in fact, there's 66 pages of this. Okay, that's the end of the book. So I thought I'd like to show you that. And then we have a paper on the Toyo Bunko version of the first voyage of the English to the islands of Japan by John Saris, 1617, an annotation attached to the photocopy of the book published for Toyo Bunko by Bensei Shuppan Publishers, Tokyo, 2016. So it says, this is by Hirano Kenichiro. Okay. And there is, well, three possible ways of referring to this paper. It's published in the Toyo Bunko Shohō 51, number 51, 2020, pages 1 to 25. Okay. Let's go back to look at it again. So let's have a look at the introduction. Make it a bit larger so I can read it more easily. Introduction. The author, full title, and year of publication of the book under review are John Saris, The First Voyage of the English to the Islands of Japan, 1617. The book is original, handwritten, and in one volume of a small folio. The dimensions are 31.4 by 21.4 centimeters, and the total page number is 121. The book is bound by vellum, edged with gold ornament. The paper used is European product. The original book is in Toyo Bunko's possession. On July 19, 1952, the book was designated as important Japanese cultural property in the category of Old Book, handwritten, and under the title of John Saris Record of Voyage to Japan, 1614 in holograph, designation number 1537. At the Toyo Bunko, the book is classified into special precious books, and the call number is PB30. Title, contents, and the original text. The title is The First Voyage of the English to the Islands of Japan, or John Saris Record of Voyage to Japan in Japanese. The content is the record of the voyage that Captain John Saris, 1579 or 1580 to 1643, the commander of the British East India Company's 8th voyage to East India, made by a fleet of 3 ships, viz. The Clove, the Hector, and the Thomas, commanding 262 sailors. The voyage was from England to Bantam on the island of Java, and by the Clove alone from Bantam to Hirano, Japan, which constituted the destination, and the return. The record is not confined to the log of the voyage and that started at the sailing from Downs, England. That's the Downs, which is the part of the sea, the North Sea, the southern part of the North Sea, near to the Thames estuary, as far as I understand it. On April 18th, 1611, and ended with the return to Plymouth, England on September 27th, 1614. While in Hirano, Saris took a round trip from there to Suruga and Edo to gain audience with Tokugawa Ieyasu and Hidetada, the first 2 Tokugawa shoguns, and was given Ieyasu's reply letter to King James I, as well as a special trade charter. With materials and information obtained during the voyage, like those given by Tokugawa Ieyasu, inserted at appropriate places, the record is more than a log, constituting something close to a travel record. The original text, on which this photocopy is based, is the very manuscript that Toyo Bunko decided to purchase from Maggs Brothers Company, a seller of old and rare books in London in 1924, and has had in its official possession since 1925. As explained in the next section, what is generally called John Saris logbook has several variant texts. However, the original manuscript Toyo Bunko possesses is distinctly the one and only text in the world, no less precious historical material than any other variant text, thus deserving to be called the Toyo Bunko version. Variant texts. The so-called John Saris logbook has 4 variant texts as follows. 1. The journal possessed by the India Office of the UK, Marine Records, number 14. 2. The Voyage of Captain John Saris to Japan, 1613, edited by Sir Ernest M. Satow, London, printed for the Hakluyt Society, 1900, the Hakluyt version, which I've been reading and putting my videos on YouTube. 3. John Saris logbook contained in Samuel Purchas, Hakluytus Posthumus, or Purchas his Pilgrims, containing a history of the world in sea voyages and land travels by Englishmen and others, 1625, 1905 Purchas version. And 4. The first voyage of the English to the islands of Japan by John Saris, 1617 Toyo Bunko version. Item number 1 is a journal preserved at the India Office, which must have taken over the company records of the British East India Company. As it is given the number, Marine Records number 14, it may be natural to regard it as the source of all the original texts of John Saris logbook. Indeed, item number 2, the Hakluyt version, edited by Ernest Satow for the Hakluyt Society, has been considered to be the printed book that took item number 1 as its source. Satow himself wrote that, with his own eyes, he saw the log in the possession of the India Office and confirmed its handwriting to be of Saris' own. But he said that once he took a glance at the journal, he had a woman transcribe it. Trying to remember her name. He did mention her by name. Mrs. Anderson, was it, or something? Can't remember. And had a specialist of Indian history at the India Office compare the copy with the original. Again, he mentioned that specialist by name. Another person who saw Saris' journal at the India Office with his own eyes was Professor Iwao Seiichi, a distinguished scholar of the history of Japanese-European exchanges, who took notice of Saris' record of voyage to Japan for the first time in Japan and promoted studies on it. Professor Iwao visited Saris' tomb in Fulham, in the suburb of London, in 1931. Oh, I didn't know that. He had a tomb in Fulham. And in 1954, had the library of the former India Office make a plate of the first page of Saris' journal in its possession. However, we have reasons to hesitate to conclude that item number 1 is the original of all the variant texts of John Saris' logbook. Satow himself wrote that for a number of reasons, the log he saw seemed not to be the original rough log, but a handwritten copy. It is certain from the bookplate pasted to it that the handwritten copy had been in the possession of Lieutenant Colonel Thomas Best Jervis until about the middle of the 19th century, when the War Office purchased it, and in considering that it was historical material that should have been in the India Office, transferred it to the latter office in 1889. I look at the plate from the material of the India Office, which Professor Iwao provided as reproduction to Murakawa translated Seirisu Nihon Tokoki, leads us to think that it is a page from a handwritten copy. All told, our question is whether, aside from the handwritten copy, the India Office possessed the original log or not. Another question is what the handwritten copy that once belonged to Colonel Jervis was. For the moment, we have to leave these questions unanswered. In the first place, there is more than a little circumstantial evidence indicating the possibility of Saris not submitting the log to the East India Company as required in the report of the return. Item number 2 is called the Hakluyt version of John Saris' logbook, and due to the course of events leading to its publication, also called the Ernest Satow version. It is called the Hakluyt version because it was commissioned by the Hakluyt Society. Satow used item number 1 as the source and had it transcribed and edited for the Society to publish. The Hakluyt Society is a book club established in England in 1846 to publish books on navigation and overseas travels in order to offer knowledge and to support research concerning foreign affairs and world geography. It was named after Richard Hakluyt, 1552 to 1616, the pioneer, collector and editor of books on sea voyages and overseas travels. This Hakluyt version is still published today. It is to be pointed out once more that it is not a handwritten version, but a printed book based on some different handwritten text. Yes, I've ordered a copy of this particular version. There are many on the internet. Item number 3 is part of a series of navigation records edited and published by Samuel Purchas, possibly 1577 to 1626, a collection of records of travels and voyages abroad by the English and other peoples before the 17th century. John Saris' logbook is included on pages 355 to 519 of Volume 3 of the series and called the Purchas version of Saris' record. Purchas, who had no personal experience of travel or voyages, collected records of sea voyages and overseas travels from sailors with whom he got acquainted in port towns at the mouth of the Thames and produced a good number of manuscripts. Richard Hakluyt's work to some extent preceded that of Purchas. It is said that Purchas was once an assistant to Hakluyt in his collecting and editing of materials. Just before his death in 1616, Hakluyt bequeathed to Purchas materials yet to be published. It is possible to infer from its title that item number 3, which Purchas published in 1625, was a collection of navigation records, including materials collected by Hakluyt. The Purchas version that we can take in our hands today is a printed book, leaving us unable to ascertain what happened to the manuscript's original materials. The features of the Toyo Bunko version. Item number 4, the Toyo Bunko version, that is the original text of this photocopy, is a beautiful handwritten manuscript Saris himself produced. In the catalogue entering this item into the Precious Book Market in London, Maggs Brothers Company described the features of this manuscript as follows. The manuscript journal of the first official voyage from England to Japan, 1611 to 1613, written by Captain Saris, Chief in Command, and presented by him to Sir Francis Bacon. Original manuscript account of the voyage written by Captain Saris himself. It is a volume of 121 pages, not the rough log, but most beautifully written, apparently at leisure when he returned home, and specially for presentation to Sir Francis Bacon, Lord High Chancellor of Great Britain. The manuscript is a small folio in its original vellum binding with gold ornamentation of the sides. Now, the National Library, yeah, I think this is it, isn't it? This is exactly what is being referred to here. Let's go back to the beginning. The National Library has scanned and made it public. See, what's that say here? Can we? Ex Libris Michaelis Tomkinson, from the books of Michael Tomkinson in Worcestershire. Okay, so somebody called Michael Tomkinson appears to have owned this copy. Let's just go to the front page again. Yeah, you see, it is beautiful. Definitely. Satow's version is a printed version. And this is apparently handwritten. Yeah, very nice. Okay, well, I think that's probably enough for the time being. If I make this too long, it will lose its impact probably. So I shall stop the share now. Yes, obviously, Captain John Saris's voyage to Japan has several versions or editions, I suppose, one might say. I think 4 are mentioned in this paper that I've just been reading. Yeah, the subject is quite a profound one, or in Japanese, okubukai. It goes, you can go a long way into it. But before I go into the rabbit hole, I think I will stop now and take stock of what I have learned. Thank you very much indeed, and I'll see you again soon. Goodbye now.